welcome back to the KMN Show. As always, I'm your host, Kyle Cushman, joined by Matt Mallard and Nigel Gebekjian. And boys, we got an interesting show today. Obviously, an interesting week for the Toronto Maple Leafs. A tough loss against the Tampa Bay Lightning on Monday night, and then a certain incident that we'll get to shortly. Later in the show, we'll also be talking a bit about prospects. We'll be giving our top 3 prospect pools in the NHL, but I think just based off of priority, we have to discuss the Morgan Rielly situation first and foremost.
You go ahead.
What do you want me to say about it?
Are we gonna?
Well, no, just
I mean,
for those that don't know, I don't know.
Give it a little bit of
I don't know how you wouldn't know at this point, but during the game on Monday night, there was a play where it sounded like a player on the ice used a homophobic slur. After NHL investigation, after cooperation from Morgan Rielly, who was the player accused, and the Toronto Maple Leafs, it was found that there were no homophobic slurs used on the ice during that play. But the firestorm that came from social media with that was pretty intense because I'll be honest, it definitely sounded like a slur was used the first time I heard it. So before we dive deeper into this, I'm just going to play a quick clip from the presser from yesterday with Kyle Dubas just talking about the situation.
Thank you for coming, everybody. Obviously, following the game last night, we were made aware of a potential situation that occurred during our game against Tampa Bay. And clearly from our standpoint here as an organization at MLSE, our ownership, in dealing with Brendan Shanahan over the last 5 years, the issue of homophobia used in a discriminatory way or even casually is one that, especially in my discussions with Brendan and the work that we've tried to do here in establishing our environment and culture within our organization is one that we do not take lightly whatsoever. Our whole goal as an organization is not only within our locker room but within all of our facilities that this is not only a safe but a very welcoming place for people of all sexualities, sexual orientations, or people who are questioning both. Obviously, when events like this come up, it forces you as an organization to evaluate where you're at. Are you doing enough? And it's something that Brendan and I have talked about at length throughout the 5 years that we've been here in conjunction with Steve to examine where we're at, what we're doing, and how we can continue to reach our objective of making not only our locker room, but all of our facilities a safe and welcoming place for all people.
Okay, so I think the biggest takeaway from this is how the Leafs and Rielly both handled the situation.
Yeah.
I think that they handled it about as well as you could. Everything about the presser yesterday, everything about the way that they handled it, Leafs PR and Kyle Dubas announcing that statement almost immediately afterwards. Everything about it was really well done.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was very, professional. It's a difficult topic to, address, considering that, right away. Everybody was right at Rielly saying, he did it. People had to seem to have, decided right away where they stood on it. He either did it or he didn't do it, and, no one was budging. So it was good that they, came out and, talked to the press, came out and made a statement. Yeah, it was handled very professionally.
I can see why people don't like Toronto Maple Leafs Twitter now. Mostly just because, as soon as it happened, everyone turned into a private investigator trying to prove Morgan's innocence. Obviously he's innocent, and it was found that he's innocent. But I've never seen so many Toronto sports writers all becoming PIs. Just looking at this clip and trying to figure out what it was. I mean, I can see why, people have that rap that Toronto media is, very biased, because clearly, as we can see, no one took. But fair, and the right answer did come out of it, that he didn't say it. But I just found it funny how everyone turned into a PI and was like, Morgan Rielly didn't say it, did say it,
yeah.
And there was both sides of it. But obviously, the truth came out, and it's a good truth for us as Leafs fans. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that another thing that was kind of unfortunate with how everything played out was it was either you were very much in favor of his innocence and you heard something else, or you wanted to vilify him immediately and make him a villain and because you thought that you heard it. And there wasn't really too many rational takes, which I mean, it's Twitter. That's what you kind of expect.
Yeah.
But I think this is just another case of maybe let's take a back seat and maybe analyze things before we jump to conclusions.
I agree.
Yeah.
But overall, very well handled by the NHL, the Leafs, Morgan Rielly. Very impressed with how all that played out. And let's hope that more good comes from this than the bad.
Certainly.
Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, let's talk Leafs Tampa.
Huh.
Oh boy,
That's
that was a stinker. Yeah, that was less than ideal to say the least. After a game like that, is your concern heading into the playoffs heightened? Does it say the same? I can't imagine
No.
it lessens, but
No, because we're not playing Tampa.
And it doesn't heighten for me because you have to also look at the circumstances. West Coast road trip, you come back, you know, boys are tired. You played Edmonton on the Saturday night, probably caught a red eye back after the game. You're back home late Saturday, you know, you rest Sunday. I mean, it's obviously a crappy time to play Tampa. You'd like to play them when you're on a home stretch for a couple of games, couple days off beforehand. Obviously, there's no excuse for losing 6-2 in any hockey game. I think we can all agree on that. But it doesn't really make me – and I agree with Matt. We're not playing them in the first round, so I don't think we have any reason to be scared. But Boston is playing right now at an equivalent level, you could argue, to Tampa, so that maybe makes me a little scared.
now you guys are talking about not playing Tampa like that. Is your goal the second round then?
Well, I don't think. Yeah, sorry, I need to read. Structuring what I said.
I meant just more for the first round.
You
when I
know,
was saying
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Obviously, to get through to win a Stanley Cup, I think you're going to have to play Tampa at some point if you're trying to come out of the East, right?
Well, yeah, you're going to. I can't see any scenario where the second wildcard team beats one of the best regular season teams we've seen in recent memory.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm worried because they're a good team, but at the same time, so are we. And I talked about this with a couple of people yesterday. After the game, let it sit. The Toronto Maple Leafs are a good hockey team. Okay, whether you like them or not, they're a good hockey team. Okay, some people rag on them, including myself and on other Leafs fans. They don't perform to the level that they should be. Some games, I think that was one of them. But you know what? They got slapped up and down the ice all night. After Matthews' goal, I thought possibly we could get a point out of this game. But it just did not look like they wanted it at all. Not from puck drop, not until final whistle. It was just absolutely... It was a bad game, but you know what? One game doesn't define a hockey team or their season. So I think...
Inspiring.
People just have to look past it, including, the Leafs themselves.
Yeah.
They just have to say it was one game. That's not who we are. Let's come back the next game for the remainder of the season and then get ready for the playoffs.
I mean, I think that's what we saw Babcock say after the game pretty much. He just said, we just didn't come out with any fight tonight. Wasn't our night. And, we're taking a rest day tomorrow. We're going to regroup. And, yeah, and I think that's really all you can do. There's no point in picking on your team after a 6-2 loss to probably the best team we've seen since the new millennium. I really don't think there's any point in getting mad over a game like that where I think you should just look to the next one. I think that's what they're doing.
So in a game like that, against a team that's that good, is there anything that you would have done differently in terms of the goaltending situation? So would you have given Anderson a bit more rest, potentially giving him the game off on the Saturday night and then letting him play that night, or even just giving Sparks that start straight up? Would you have done anything differently in that situation, or was this just kind of inevitable based off of the Leafs' performance?
I agree 100% with what they did. I think it's you play your best goalies for the best games, or you play your best goalie for the best games. And I would have been, if they didn't play, if they were to rest Anderson on Saturday night against Edmonton and then they lost that game, everyone would be saying, oh, why'd you do that? But then they play him, they win 3-2, and then we come in, and obviously he's a little more tired, but I don't know. I think he has to play against Tampa because you need to make that was a big statement game. I think it could have been for the Leafs, and unfortunately, it
should have been.
It was the wrong kind of statement they made. But I think you have to put forth your best lineup for those kind of games. Monday night in Toronto ain't nothing like it. Monday night in Toronto, and yeah, that's all I have to say, Mallard.
There was a thing going around that said, I don't know if either of you guys heard about it. They talked about it on the broadcast that there was a big flu bug going around the Leafs.
Yeah.
So like the entire, Leafs club, including some, management members and even a referee, I heard, missed.
Or
'cause he was
linesman, I
sick.
think it was. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So you know what? Yeah, okay, you could say, okay, well, they were sick that game, right?
Sick, tired,
Yeah,
not
but
well rested.
It's not an excuse because, but you have to look at it. You can't blame Freddie for that loss because, a lot of those goals that he allowed were tip-ins and like ridiculous redirections. So
Yeah. He didn't have a lot of luck on his side.
no, but at the same time, our team did not help him out at all. Right, a 3-on-1, and you're on a power play. That's just they just weren't in it. Their heads weren't in it. They weren't in the right place. So I don't know.
It's tough because this is exactly the kind of game that the Leafs need to show up for, and they just kind of haven't.
All year. It kind of seems like.
To me, it's concerning because you would hope that not only the players show up for a game like this, and there were some players that were going, like Matthews had that incredible goal, and that line looked pretty solid, but you just want more. Like, you want a better defensive effort. You just want players and coaching staff and whatever it is to get up for a game against the best team in the league that's in your division, that if you are going to go on this deep run that you've been talking about, you have to go through this team. You have to beat them 4 games out of 7. And they've looked good against Tampa for the most part all season. They've played really well against them. But a game like this, it makes me a little bit worried. It's just they got dominated in every facet of the game.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Like, Tampa's penalty kill scored more than the Leafs power play. That's another thing. The Leafs power play, I'd like it to be a lot more consistent, but that's been like that all year. One of the major takeaways is that Kasperi Kapanen was listed out due to illness, and he is now listed out with a concussion.
Yeah.
Oof.
So we are cashing our injury.
Maybe
now.
he's.
Oh, yeah.
Have you guys seen that video where the girl slips on her puke and then falls? Maybe he had the puke.
Why would you
slipped
bring that up?
and then concussed himself? That's what I'm saying.
What are you talking about?
Because he went from illness to concussion. Sorry.
What are you talking
okay,
about?
Sorry.
I apologize for that.
Well, he went from illness to concussion just like that.
Wow. Maybe, Nigel. Maybe.
I was just thinking.
That's been the KMN
Yeah, you
Show.
were.
Thank you for listening. No, wow.
Nigel was thinking. Unbelievable.
Wow. Okay. No, you see, I was probably thinking that it was when he went shoulder first into the boards.
There's also that.
That's probably a little more
Yeah.
likely than him throwing up, slipping in it, and smacking his head off of something. Wow.
But we never know.
That's incredible. I really hope it's not that first one. But yeah, Leafs injury bug has definitely hit a lot harder than in recent years. A lot of people are going to get opportunities here down the stretch. You've already got defensemen like Martin Marintz and Igor Rozhganov and
Jesus
Justin
Christ.
Hall getting consistent minutes now.
I love it.
And we're going to see one of, or maybe multiple, Ennis, Patan, and Trevor Moore getting quite a bit of ice time because all of a sudden there's going to be a top 9 spot up for grabs. With Kapanen out, who would you fill that spot on Matthews' line with? And from there, because I would imagine it's somebody in the top 9, I've got a certain person in mind. And then who would you bump up from there?
I would put Nylander with him. I don't.
That's my move.
They played them together last game, kind of overshadowed by the loss.
Yeah.
But
They did start on the same line together, correct?
Yeah.
So.
no, I thought they played well. As a team, nobody was going, but they looked good. Nylander's looked good for the past couple of weeks. So like I said, one game I don't think is a big enough sample size, so I think you need to keep them with each other for a couple games.
Well, they should have been playing together for a while at this point.
Well, yeah,
but
yeah, but I think now's the time. You're in the last month. You need to figure out what you want for the playoffs, and I think you need to start playing them together now instead of a week before.
to me, you should have been, to a certain extent, maybe preparing for this kind of situation a little bit more throughout the season. So giving certain guys days off and looking at maybe different line combinations to see what's going to work with maybe some other people. Because right now, the lines at morning skate were Hyman, Tavares, Marner as per usual, and then it was Janssen, Matthews, Nylander again.
Zesty.
But then it's Marleau, Kadri, Brown, and then Ennis, Gauthier, Moore. Which
Please.
I'd put more on the second line.
I was
with
about to say,
Kadri.
please.
that's
Oh.
the third.
Or the third line, I mean. Yeah.
I was going to say,
I would think about the same.
please demote Connor Brown and promote our boy Trevor Moore.
There's no
scored.
reason for Brown to be promoted over those guys.
No,
He said
I
he
said
said
demote.
demoted.
No, I know.
Oh, sorry.
I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was scared for a second. Yeah, no, Brown has really not been too great this year. And obviously he's not a high scoring player. I mean, he did have that 120 goal season, but
And that was playing with Matthews. But
Right.
he's an average to below average player based off of the players that the Leafs have
yeah.
around him. It's not that Brown isn't like a third line guy. On most teams, he is. It's just on the Leafs, I would rather see Marleau, Kadri, Moore, or Ennis on that line or something like
Yeah.
that. Because a line of Marleau, Kadri, and Brown,
They have not been
it's
great.
meh.
Yeah.
That doesn't instill fear in you. Hyman, Tavares, Marner, that does. Janssen, Matthews, Nylander, that definitely
Yeah.
does.
That's a very fast, that's a strong line.
Is it as mobile as Shea Weber?
Nothing's as mobile as shit ever. Come on.
But a third line with Marleau, Kadri, and Moore, that's a bit more of a wild card than
because you have way more speed. Like
exactly.
when you have Marleau, Kadri, and Brown, you really don't have that much speed up front. But
Yeah,
you add a 5'9" assassin, Trevor Moore.
Assassin.
Yeah.
I like it.
And
I agree. Trevor Moore brings a lot of energy to any line he's on. But I think Connor Brown's lost a step. I don't know where. He seems to have. I don't know if you guys agree, but just from watching,
Yeah.
he seems like he's a little out of it.
Yeah, to a certain extent, yeah. That also just might be the kind of player that he is at this point. Looking at the defense as well, Ozhiganov is currently in the lineup for tonight against Chicago rather than Justin Hall.
heck yeah, baby.
I guess I had to throw that one in there
Yeah,
for you.
thank you.
But no, just looking at those lines, like Kadri isn't the kind of player that's going to be able to kind of carry a line that has two players on it that need somebody else to go.
Yeah.
Kadri's the kind of player that needs like at least one player in support to really be at the top of his game. And with Marleau and Brown, I just don't see him getting that. Like Marleau's still solid, but I would like to see somebody who's got a bit more energy, a bit more offensive skill than Connor Brown. But that's just me. And I think
you'd
we're all
like
in
to see
agreement.
Trevor Moore.
I would like to
Yeah.
see Trevor Moore there.
I think we all agree.
I think he's more than earned it at this point.
Yeah.
Aha!
That was
Got it.
accidental, but
Oh,
I appreciate
Trevor
that. But no, like, why not? Like, this is
Yeah. Why
when you're
not?
this
Yeah.
deep in the season.
You just got smacked 6-2. Try
Stuff.
Yeah. I agree.
He's played under 20 games. He's excelled on the fourth line, where not a whole lot of players in the last couple of years have.
The fourth line right now is the best fourth line the Leafs have had in God knows
A
how
long time.
Yeah.
And so when you've got a player excelling like that, and you have a player in your top 9 go down, I don't see why you wouldn't give him a shot. It's just going back to good old faithful with Connor Brown, and I just don't see why.
Connor Brown's such a Mike Babcock player, though. Like
He is.
what
Oh,
do
he
you
loves
think?
him.
Yeah, that's
He
what I mean.
absolutely
Because he's
loves
a
him.
guy who just skates, and that's why skates hard, goes to the net.
You know
Like,
what you're
He
gonna get out
skates
of
hard,
him.
not efficiently.
Not efficiently, but yeah, he works hard. Maybe that's a better thing to say.
Yeah, you know what you're gonna get out of him every
Yeah,
night.
and that's why Mike Babcock likes that, the safe. Because Trevor Moore, yeah, he's had some fantastic games, but he's also had some games where I haven't even noticed him on the ice, right? And
There's been a couple players like that recently, where you kind of forget they're playing.
Yeah.
They're just not. It's something they need to figure out like soon.
It's late in the season. I would like to see some players get maybe some rest days as well, especially with the amount of injuries that the Leafs have had recently. I don't see why Anderson should be starting as often as he is at this point. Give Sparks more starts, give Anderson some rest. Even some guys like Ron Hainsey, give him a rest day. Obviously, you can't really do that at this point with the amount of injuries that you have, but once Calle Rosen's back, and if Dermott and Gardner are still out at that point, give Hainsey a couple days off.
He is like 36 years old.
Looking at the forward lines, give Marlowe a couple days off.
He's 38 years old. He definitely needs it.
Just some stuff like that. So I'm a little bit concerned based off of the Tampa game. I'm a little bit concerned with the injuries that the Leafs have and the lineup choices that are coming from those, but it's going to be an interesting stretch run because the Leafs are basically locked in to their position. It's just whether they have home ice or not. At this point, it's looking less and less likely that they will.
Well, I think it's looking more likely than it has over the last week or two.
They just got thumped by Tampa.
Boston's 4 points ahead of them.
Yeah, but we have a game at hand, and we're playing Chicago. Chicago's good right now.
Chicago's really hot right now.
Chicago just won 7-1
against one of the hotter teams in the NHL in Arizona.
Little story. I'm in week 1 of playoffs in fantasy.
Oh, okay.
I'm the number 3 seed. And
how many teams?
There's 8 teams in the league.
Okay.
And it's a keeper league. So
okay.
Oh, this one.
So I have 2 players on IR, Dylan Larkin and Erik Karlsson, and then I have Jack Eichel on my suspension reserve because he's an idiot. So
retweet.
What I do is I try to optimize those roster spots that I have, and I add a player that I think is going to do well that night. So I add Darcy Kemper.
Ooh.
Because Darcy Kemper hadn't had a negative fantasy point game in forever and was coming off of like a 5-something, or I think it was like a 3.8 or something.
Okay.
And then he puts up negative 1.8 points for me because he was
7
bad.
goals.
No, he gave up 4 and then
he
got
got pulled.
Thank
okay.
God.
Okay.
And then the very next night, he beats St. Louis and gets his 6.8. So I love me the Arizona Coyotes, especially after that preseason hot take. But
Yeah,
I'm not a big fan of
good
Darcy
for you.
Kemper right now.
Fair.
Not a big fan of Darcy Kemper right now. Arizona's in a playoff spot right now, are they not?
Yeah, they are, I believe, 8-2-0 in their last 10, or 7-3-0, and they are rolling.
8-2-0.
Yeah, they are rolling.
What can I say?
They just picked up the second wild card spot.
How's Casey Middlestat going right now?
Oh, I meant to send this to you guys. Here's a little story from me. I was playing, I started a new NHL franchise mode, and I was like, you know who we're going to do it with? Buffalo, because
Please
they have.
say that Middlestat.
Yeah, he won the Calder, and I simmed the whole season. He put up like 85
oh my
points.
God.
I was like, "This
who
is."
Who did you play him with?
I think I put him on the wing because I was like,
Oh,
you're kind of
nice.
small, so I just put him with like Eichel and
Oh,
I forget
there
who
you go.
else. Yeah, and it was just like
That's pretty fun.
game over. 85 points, won the Calder.
Well, speaking of the Calder and Casey Middlestat, let's get to our prospect pools.
Yes.
Nigel, you want to take the lead on this one?
Do you want to do like 1-1-1 or
Yeah,
all
yeah.
three?
Start
Okay.
with.
I don't
start
really
with.
have one. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm gonna
Relax.
Yeah.
You're
I
good.
think a fairly obvious one in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna highlight for me. I'm highlighting 3 players from each team who really interest me. So firstly, Joel Farabee. He has 31 points in 34 games at Boston U right now. He was their first-round pick this year. So obviously, you're getting a lot of talent out of him. Played at the World Juniors for USA. Didn't have the greatest tournament, but still a very impressive young player. And I think he's probably him and the next player, their top 2 prospects right now. Secondly, we all know him pretty well as Canadian fans, Morgan Frost. Unbelievable season so far for Sault Ste. Marie. 108 points in 57 games, which is absolutely ridiculous. Probably Canada's, in my opinion, Canada's best forward at the World Juniors. And I'm really excited about him. Hopefully he has a great NHL career. And then the third one, I kind of cheated a little. I know we're supposed to do prospects, but I put in Carter Hart just because
That's fair.
he hasn't really started, or he has started, but he hasn't had a full season yet, so I'm still going to consider him a prospect. And based off what I've seen him do in the NHL so far, I think Philly should have a big reason to be excited about him. And I think those 3 players are some of the future of Philadelphia hockey, so I think they have a really good farm system going there.
Absolutely. So is that your number 1 or is that your number 3?
That's probably my number one.
Okay.
Yeah. So, sorry.
No,
Should've
no,
started with
it's all
three.
good. It's
Yeah.
all good. For me, my number one. So when I was looking at lists and who has prospects and whatever, in determining who my top three were, there were a bunch of different teams that I had in contention, probably 5 or 6 that were up there, and I was looking for a combination of potential superstar talent at the top and multiple prospects that have a legitimate shot at the NHL. And so for me, my number one was the New York Islanders. Just looking at the amount of prospects that I see having a good, not only a good shot in the NHL, but having an impact in the NHL. You've got first round picks from last year, Oliver Wahlstrom and especially Noah Dobson.
Yeah.
Those two are a fantastic duo that they got in the first round last year. But then also you've got Kiefer Bellows, you've got Ruslan Iskakov, who I really like.
Great name.
They got
Holy.
him, I believe, in the third round last year. But then you have guys like Bodie Wild. You've got guys
Unreal
in the
names as well.
KHL
That's
right
some
now,
great names.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Ilya Sorokin. You've got Linus
Holy.
Soderstrom. Like
Yes,
you've
I
got,
mean-
not only do you have really good names,
You got some
These
good
are some-
players.
really good players. Devon Taves has played in the NHL and he's looked really good. Even a former 5th overall pick, I think he was a 5th overall. Yeah, Michael Dowcall has had a resurgence in the AHL this year and has played NHL games this year and has looked solid. You've got a prospect to a certain extent. He's 24, but Anatoly Golishev has put up really big numbers in the KHL the last couple of years. They've got 3 really, really solid goaltending prospects for a team that hasn't really had very good goaltending until this year. You've got a handful of really good forward prospects, but then you've also got some really good defensive prospects to go with that. And so while they might not have like that superstar like a team that I'm gonna get to in a minute does, they've got a really, really deep one, and they've got a lot of really, really solid talent.
Yeah. I can
Matt, I believe you had the Islanders
Yeah,
as well, but
I
do you have
also-
somebody else that you want to mention over there?
No, I had the 3. I had Sorokin, Wahlstrom, and Dobson, and then Bellows down there as well. I don't
Yeah.
know if you mentioned Devon Taves.
I mentioned him a bit, but
Yeah, but pretty much the same thing as you. I think Ilya Sorokin's a guy that I've been looking at for a little bit now. I think he's got some pretty good potential. And like you said, Noah Dobson, really strong right-handed D. We've seen him in the World Juniors. We know what he's about. And Oliver Wahlstrom was someone I really like too. He's a
hasn't had a fantastic season
No,
this year
no,
in
but, you
college,
know-
but it's an adjustment.
Yeah.
He's still got an insane shot, and I'm still pretty high on him going
and along
forward.
with Kiefer Bellows, those are 2 pretty strong wingers. So I think for me, I also had Islanders number 1.
Nigel, you want to?
Yeah. Okay. I
take
just
who
like
you
to
got
preface. I didn't necessarily go off strength. I just went off like teams who were
No,
most
it's all good.
interesting.
All good.
So if someone's listening and
We're
doesn't
just
agree,
having a little
Yeah.
discussion. People obviously aren't gonna agree with everything.
So,
but, you know,
my second one is we're going second strongest. Colorado Avalanche.
Okay.
So I really like their 2 defensive prospects that I think most of us know, Cale Makar and Connor Timmins. Both played for Canada at the World Juniors 2 years ago, I guess.
yeah.
And both very impressive players. I really liked Cale Makar in that tournament. I thought he was extremely impressive. And then keeping with the World Juniors, Martin Kaut,
Yeah.
Kaut, however you pronounce it, very impressive with the Czech at the World Juniors. I think was kind of overshadowed because Zadina was on that team and everyone was like, oh, what's
He was
Zadina?
arguably the best Czech.
But I think I agree, he was probably the best Czech player at that tournament. So I really like what the Avs have going forward. They really don't have, obviously they have Tyson Barrie, but they don't have many great defensive players right now in the NHL. I think you could argue they're
Sam Girard is the other one
Right.
that I would mention. They have 2 solid top 4 guys, but other than that, they don't have much.
right. So I think Makar and Timmins can come in and obviously add a lot to that back line of the ice. And Kaut obviously looked pretty impressive at the World Juniors. I think he can, I think he could be a player like Landeskog for them. Maybe puts up some pretty good numbers in the future. So I'm really excited about the Avs as well.
I apologize for what I'm about to mention, but to a certain extent, when you're talking about prospect pools, you almost have to talk about the draft pick capital that a team has as well.
That is true.
And when you've got what's going to be a top 4 pick as well, that's
Yes.
pretty
Yeah,
pretty tasty.
I should have mentioned that.
well,
because
no, like we're talking about
yeah.
prospect pools, and this is something that's slightly
but they're
different.
gonna get one of the top prospects.
They're gonna get one of
potentially
Hughes, Kako, or one of Podkolzin, Doc, Cousins, one of those players, and that's going to be big because right now Colorado is 100% a one-line team.
Oh yeah.
And if you can, add some supplementary scoring to that, and if you can get guys like Tyson Jost going, who hasn't really been fantastic in the NHL,
another thing I'd like to add
dangerous
for the Avs, Matt. I remember we looked at this. They have no right shot players. Remember?
Yeah.
Like, they are all left-handed.
Really?
Yeah. I think they're like
3 or 4.
They only have 3 or 4 right-hand shots.
Wow.
So definitely draft a right-hand shot.
Makar is a righty.
I know. So
yeah. I also like Vladislav Kamenev. He's had some injury issues, but he's pretty solid.
he didn't come up in my search, but I take your word for it.
For me, my number 2 has to go with what I was mentioning. I really like some of the players that they have right now in the system, but they've got a ton of draft picks coming up, even though they might not have their first. It's the Ottawa Senators. They've got some really intriguing names. Obviously, they got the big dog in Eric Brandstrom. That's a massive, massive acquisition. He's probably I'd probably give him like my number 2 prospect in the NHL right now.
Behind who?
I'll get to it.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Recently signed an NHL contract. I'll just say that.
Okay.
But you look at some of the names, and it's really intriguing. Obviously, you've got Brady Tkachuk playing in the NHL, your first round pick. Personally, I would have given that pick to Colorado and taken my chances in the lottery this year, but that's the decision they went with.
I still think
Tkachuk.
Brady's been pretty impressive.
Tkachuk has been better than what I expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Colin White as well has been.
Yeah.
Colin White's been really solid as well. But looking at some of the names, Philip Chalopic's been really good in the AHL. Drake Batherson has been incredible in the AHL. Even guys like Logan Brown, even though I may not be as high on them, have performed really well and have legitimate shots at NHL careers. Rudolph Balcers has been playing
Great
NHL
man.
minutes. Josh Norris out in Michigan. I have to give that little shout out there. He's been really, really good. So they've got a ton of picks. Philip Gustafson as well in goal. I don't mind him as a prospect, but they've got a ton of picks coming up. They've got a really solid base in terms of the prospects that they have. It's just a matter of development and making good on the amount of draft picks that they have.
Please don't mess this up. Like, they have the potential to completely rebuild their organization with these draft picks and the prospects they have, and I really just hope Ottawa can do something right for the first time in a long time. And
so just going back on Josh Norris, that's one of the players that they got in the Erik Karlsson trade, which I think many of us were pretty critical of at the time. But Josh Norris has been very, very good in Michigan. He's been hurt, but he has 19 points in 17 games. He'll go back next year, and if he can put up big numbers, that's another huge player for them. Matt, you got anything ready over there?
Yeah, I have. For me, I think this is not necessarily a strong one, but a very interesting one to me because, I mean, again, we all know a lot of these names, but we don't necessarily talk about them as much. But I have Tampa Bay Lightning.
Ooh. Okay.
They have Cal Foote, that big, right D prospect. He's looking pretty good. Taylor Radish, Boris Kachuk, Matthew Joseph, and Connor Ingram is an interesting one to me. I believe he
That's
put up
weird because he just went down to the ECHL.
Yeah.
Even though he has the most shutouts in the AHL. That's
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there, but he has
attitude problem or something?
has the most shutouts in the AHL. They were apparently shopping him, like looking to trade him at the deadline in like some kind of rental deal. And then right after the deadline, he goes down to Orlando in the ECHL. That's
really weird.
I don't know what's going on there, but
where he's putting up a 912 save percentage, I believe, through
in the ECHL.
Yeah.
That's really solid in the ECHL.
Yep. And he was putting up a 919.
Exactly. Like he was playing really well. So I don't know what's happening there, but that's an interesting
It is
one.
an interesting name. And Tampa is, a team where you look at them and you think of them as a kind of like the Leafs, where a lot of their prospects have maybe graduated, have been traded to, they can't sign them or whatever, to make room for, some of the guys they've had to sign over the last couple of years. But they're still, I'd say, pretty strong when it comes to prospects.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because that goes to show that just because you're a top NHL team, it doesn't mean you need to sacrifice your prospect pool.
Yeah, I agree.
You may not have the amount of picks that other teams have, but it doesn't mean that you can't make good on those picks that you have. Because if you look at their list, the players that they have, it's not players from high picks. It's all players from mid-round selections that they've hit on or look like they're going to hit on, that they've performed well in the AHL. And that's what these really solid NHL teams right now are going to have to do going into the future. So I like that you brought up Tampa, because that's an interesting one. Personally, I don't have them as high, but interesting look. Nigel, who do you got as your final?
Okay, this one, like, I can guarantee you, some people probably wouldn't think they're top 10, but I think if everyone pans out the way their potential, their ceiling is, I think this could be one of the best prospects pools. The Vancouver Canucks.
I was just about to mention them.
Okay, so obviously everyone knows Elias Pettersson, gonna win the Calder, unfortunately. Sorry, Casey.
Yeah.
And then obviously another player who's played for them this year who I think is really exciting, Adam Gaudette, really young, exciting player. They also have, Jake Virtanen, who's still kind of young, hasn't had a great NHL career yet.
He's
but
progressing better than I thought based off of the last couple seasons.
Yeah, and they have a couple of other, solid young players. A player who really excites me in their prospect pool, Olli Juolevi.
That's somebody that people don't talk about enough.
Yeah.
Really?
He's putting up very solid numbers in Utica right now.
So, so that was actually early in the season. He's missed almost the entire season.
Oh, okay.
Due to a knee injury.
He was putting up good numbers, though.
That's exactly it. So last year he had a bit of I wouldn't say rough based off of his age, but he didn't have the insane season that some were expecting of him out in Liga after coming over from the London Knights. He was going to play this year all season in the AHL, and then he gets injured. It's just a name that I still am very intrigued by, and not enough people are giving love to. So I like that you brought up Juolevi.
He's also huge. Like, he's pretty big.
Yeah.
Smooth skating. I watched a bit of his film. He looked pretty good to me. Some other names, though, obviously with the Canucks, probably their biggest one who's not playing for them right now, Quinn Hughes.
That's my number one prospect in the NHL.
Sick player at Michigan. Another shout out to Michigan. Good defenseman.
Man, Rain's going to love this.
And then my last prospect, I think, has the potential to be their best prospect. Obviously not including Pettersson.
I know what you mean.
Thatcher Demko. I know he's been in a backup role. He's played a couple games for them this year. I really like Thatcher Demko. I'm very high on him. I think he has a very good frame for a goalie. Obviously, he's massive. He's pretty good. I mean, obviously, it's hard to judge him as a backup in the NHL right now. I think if he has a full and I don't think he'll get a full season either next year. I think they'll still probably...
He'll get more time.
But I think they'll still probably go with Markstrom as their starter. But I think he's very exciting, and I think he has the potential to be a great NHL goalie. Someone like... I don't know what a comparative is like, someone like Vasilevsky one day. Maybe I think he could be that good, honestly. That's just my opinion, though. So, yeah, the Canucks excite me a lot, and I think if everyone pans out for them, this could be a really good prospect pool.
Another guy that I want to mention, just because that was the team that I was going to mention, is Tyler Madden. Third-round pick last year. Absolutely.
He's in the NCAA.
Has absolutely blown my expectations out of the water. Last year, in the USHL with Tri-City, he had 20 points in 32 games. Was a decent prospect, but then this year at Northeastern has been incredible. 26 points in 31 games as a freshman at Northeastern.
Yeah.
And then 4 points in 7 games at the World Juniors. He's been a revelation for them, and he's been very, very good. But I assume you've got all your Vancouver out of the way?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to go to the team that I had just on the bubble.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it because we're going to get some interesting conversation because of it. It's the Montreal Canadiens.
Yay.
What?
Really? You're
the guy in the Leafs hat just said yay to that.
Well, no, because I think they don't get enough attention. I know people say
they get plenty of attention.
Further,
relax.
No, I just think that they could possibly. That's not who I have, but I just think that they have Ryan Poehling, Nick Suzuki, Josh Brook. Jake Evans, they have the names that are there, and they could pan out.
Okay, this was his thing.
No, it's good. Let him go. Let him go.
No, go on. Yeah, I have
stealing his thunder.
Yeah, go for it.
You mentioned some of the big names there. Nick Suzuki, I'm absolutely huge on.
Yeah.
I absolutely love him. That was a huge acquisition for Max Pacioretty, along with Tatar and a pick. That was an incredible trade.
Yeah.
Props to Bergevin. I've trashed him quite a bit, but that's an incredible trade. Paling, I'm not as high on as some other people.
The World Junior really made him look. I think it inflated his.
I was about to
yeah.
say, I think this is a bit of Casey Middlestat syndrome, where you've got a really good World Junior performance and maybe it's a little bit blown out of the water,
Yeah.
but he's still a really solid prospect that'll play NHL games and probably be a very solid middle six guy.
Yeah.
Jesse Alonen, I really like playing in Liga. He's got some very intriguing numbers as a very young player in that league. He's got some insane skill. I really like him I believe he was a second-round pick last year. You mentioned one of the other ones, Josh Brook. He's just dominating in the WHL. Point per game plus. That's a very, very good prospect there. I'm not as high on some other guys like Alexander Romanov, and I mentioned Ryan Paling. I think he's a good prospect. I'm just not as high on him as some other people. But overall, especially with some of the picks that they had last year, like even some later guys like Alan McShane, they've got some really, really solid prospects to supplement what they've already got on that NHL team.
Yeah.
Some very, very solid, very, very solid players there. So, Matt, who do you got coming up for your last pick here?
This one is just because I knew I didn't think anyone would have it. Again, not necessarily strength of pool, but I'd say
Exciting.
interesting
Yeah.
and possibly exciting is Winnipeg.
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh.
What?
Okay. Okay.
disagree?
No, I want to hear what you have to say.
So, as far as these four go, and it's really not even only these four, but these are the ones that I pulled up. They have Christian Vasalainen, who is
Yes,
left-wing.
that's the big one.
Yeah, he's playing in Manitoba. And
Was playing in Manitoba. He finished the season in Jokerit.
Okay. Eric Comrie.
Yeah.
Okay. He is playing with the Manitoba Moose. He's putting up a .919 save percentage.
It's pretty good.
Sammy Niku. Okay, he's a left defenseman. He's another one who I think is not a huge name, but I think
Underrated.
Underrated, yeah. He put up 54 points as a left D in the AHL last year through 76 games.
It's pretty good.
And then Logan Stanley.
Yeah, let's
is
pump
another
the
one.
tires there.
What?
Logan Stanley's not good.
No, I know, but I mean, he's how old is he? He's 20 years old.
He's
Okay.
6'7".
Ooh,
That's about it.
that's exciting.
He's a left defenseman.
He also went 18th overall.
Oh,
Yeah, well,
And
Can't
had-
say- can't say I
there's a
remember
name,
that.
right? You know him from, right? So I
He
don't know.
went 18th overall after having 17 points in 64 games in the OHL.
probably because he was 6'7".
Yeah.
Because
But
he's
then-
6'7" and had 103 penalty minutes. I don't like Logan Stanley as a prospect, but to each their own.
Hey man,
Fair.
I'm just saying, Vasalainen and Niku are the ones that.
Yeah.
you know,
Vesalainen's very, very solid.
Sammy
and
Niku
Comrie
looks
as well.
pretty. Completely basing this off NHL video game, but
No, Sammy Niko's a really, really solid prospect.
solid
your
pickup if you
season
ever.
sim? Your
Well,
s-
I
your
picked
full
him up
season
and he
simulation.
put
I
up
have
some good
him.
numbers. Yeah, puts up some good numbers.
Oh boy.
I have him on my prospect reserve in fantasy too. What can I say?
Oh.
I like him. Some interesting discussions there. Some players or some teams that I wasn't
Yeah.
really expecting brought up. I don't agree at all with Winnipeg's. I'd say they have one of the worst in the NHL, but they have a couple interesting names. But yeah, some really good conversation there. Another team, just because I had a couple on the bubble for me. Another one that I like specifically because of their draft last year. The Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, they're good.
Zadina obviously is the big dog up top, but I really like Jonathan Berggren. He was a second-round pick for them last year. I was kind of hoping the Leafs would get him. I'm very happy with Rasmus Sandin. You have something you
Well, there was
wanna
also
add?
Calgary I was looking at, but a lot of their
They're
players
solid.
Like Rasmus Anderson's playing for them
Mhm.
currently right now, and a lot of them have kind of moved up.
I think one that we kind of maybe overlooked was Chicago as well.
Chicago, for me, they've got arguably the best defensive core of prospects. I just don't really see high end in terms of their forwards.
Yeah, I think Yokoharu is just the one that catches a lot of
Yokoharu,
people.
yeah. Ian Mitchell down in or out in Denver, I believe he's playing. They've got some really, really solid defensive guys, but I don't know if they really have the.
Oh, and they have Adam Boquist. Yeah,
They've
have
got some very, very
yeah.
solid defensemen,
But all around, you're right. Yeah.
yeah, I was debating putting them up there, but
I think they're definitely
Yeah,
top 10,
you have to
top
have.
12.
Yeah, they're definitely
Yeah.
up there.
They
just
not well rounded.
other than like Philip Kurashev, I just don't really see too many forward prospects that are fantastic. Just going along with some of the Detroit I was mentioning. I also really like the pickup yesterday of Taro Hirose. He's put up dominant numbers in the Big Ten with Michigan State. I was hoping that the Leafs would sign him. They were mentioned in the race forum. They didn't get him. I'm a little bit sad, but
Picked up Duzak.
not officially yet. But
Oh, well.
all signs are pointing towards the Leafs getting him. That's an interesting pickup. But no, very interesting prospect discussion.
yeah, that was fun.
That was pretty fun. Is there any last notes of teams that you guys had on the bubble at all?
Calgary was one of mine. You
I
mentioned
kind of
that.
looked at St. Louis, but they're in the same kind of boat.
St. Louis
as-
has so many players
that
playing
are-
for
exactly.
them.
St.
That's-
Louis is
that
a
was
weird
my-
one
that was my-
because
yeah.
they're kind of on the edge of like they've got some intriguing players, but a lot of them are like playing like have NHL, have AHL.
Yeah.
Like even a guy like like Robert Thomas is the obvious one, but Jordan Kyrou has split a little bit of time. He's still a prospect though because he's playing majority of his time in the AHL.
Yeah.
But even a guy like Sammy Blais, who's been really intriguing, he's been splitting a lot of time. So they're kind of in between. Was there any other teams that you want to mention? Because there's at least a couple prospects that I still want to mention.
Not off the top of my head, so
Go
you can go
English.
for it. Yeah.
A guy that isn't really talked about enough because it's not really known if he's going to come over anytime soon from Russia is Kirill Kaprizov
Oh yeah.
in Russia.
Mm.
He is insane. He is one of the best prospects in the NHL with the Minnesota Wild. It's just a question of whether he comes over. He's 21, and this year in the KHL, he has 51 points, 30 goals in 57 games.
Yeah, I'll do it.
He is insane. Like these are Artemi Panarin-esque numbers, especially at his age. And so if he comes over, whoo boy, look out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a question
And
of
Minnesota has him.
if/when. Yeah, Minnesota does.
They could use him.
Every NHL team could use him.
Yeah.
One final team that I did want to mention, just as we look to head out here in a couple minutes, the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've shed a ton in terms of draft capital, in terms of prospects. They've still got some very solid names.
I don't know if they're losing Brandstrom really killed them. I think
Brandstrom and Suzuki were huge
Yeah,
hits.
and
I would have had
yeah.
them number one.
They have Cody Glass.
Cody
Cody
Glass
Glass
is the big one.
Yeah.
They've still got the rights to Nikita Gusev, who is the best player in the
Ooh,
KHL.
yeah, that's true.
If he
Yeah.
comes over, that's a huge get for them. I don't know if they've burned that bridge because of what happened with Vadim Shipachyov, but I don't know. We'll see. But that was a good little discussion. We got into the
Yeah.
Leafs quite a bit, addressed the Rielly situation. I'm glad that that's done and over with. I'm interested to see what the Leafs do lineup-wise coming up, and a good little prospect discussion as teams look to bolster their prospect pools with some college free agents coming up. But
Yeah.
good show today. Looking forward to what's coming in the next couple weeks. Just remember that the Arizona Coyotes are in the playoffs. The Boston Bruins are as well, and Casey Middlestat
He's gonna win the no.
is more likely to get sent down than he
Montreal and
is
Vancouver are
to
not
win the
in
Calder.
playoffs.
Yeah, I think that pipe dream's over, unfortunately, Matt.
Yeah.
It was fun while it lasted. Like,
it was fun while it
you
lasted.
know,
No, it wasn't,
No,
if we're
yeah.
being honest.
I enjoyed it.
You just like to throw out hot takes at the end of shows, but
You want a hot take?
Yeah, you got 20
you
seconds.
already mentioned Logan Stanley when we were talking about the best prospect pool, so go for it.
My hot take for this:
Yeah, we've got like 30 seconds, so you want to find a second gear?
Leafs in 5.
against
Over.
The Bruins.
Oh God.
Leafs in 5, baby.
So we have that, and then we have Nigel mentioning Kasper Kapanen getting a concussion from puking, apparently. But
Leafs in 5.
okay, thank you for listening to the KMN Show. It's been an interesting episode, but thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time, Wednesdays at 11 a.m.